Hello. I believe it's the middle of the week. In our second class of week 2 lockdown. Last class I introduced Maslow and his theories of motivation. I'm going to follow through with that now and kind of talk about some of the reasons why that happened and then move forward towards a guy named Herzberg slowly. So this is something called the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect was something that kind of was a test of the motivation of employees, because it was one of those efficiency ideas that the Taylor kind of management system thought would work, but it had a surprising result. So it's called the Hawthorne experiment.
Is watching you? Well,
sounds there. Let me put the subtitles in there. Ever feel like your boss is watching you?
do you ever feel like your boss is watching you? Well, they might be, but just not for the reason you think. A study called the Hawthorne experiment was conducted in the 1920s to see whether the act of employee monitoring had any effect on their productivity levels. The results were varied, and since then the study has been replicated many times, all in the big answer the same lingering question: does workplace monitoring have an inherent effect on worker performance? Countless scholars have come to ask themselves not whether the Hawthorne effect exists, but more as to why it exists, and why the results can vary so widely. Studies have shown that in traditionally autonomous roles, such as teachers and physicians, workplace monitoring can have a positive effect on both efficiency and productivity. However, counter to this, some claim that employee monitoring can have detrimental effects on the individual, stifling their ability to perform tasks of their own volition, and instead placing too heavy a focus on end performance. In 2012, we conducted our own research into the Hawthorne effect by investigating and tracking the changes that occurred in a garment manufacturing plant in India when workplace monitoring was introduced. Radio frequency identification, or RFID tags, were added to part-made pants and jackets, and then data was collected as the workers completed each item of clothing. In our study, there appeared a direct correlation between the complexity of the tasks and the effect on productivity that the monitoring system had. The assembly of the jackets, which is deemed the more complex of the two garments to manufacture, saw a larger increase in productivity than the pants, suggesting that as the complexity of the task rises, so does the level of productivity produced as a result of the workplace monitoring. If you would like any more information on the Hawthorne experiment, or to read the full study, then please follow the link below.
Monster!
So, yeah, let me try one more of those. That's a little bit clear, but I think we can do a little bit better.
Researchers have been asking this question for over 100 years. Some have argued that monitoring improves productivity. It can also encourage good behaviors and discourage bad ones. However, monitoring can also have a negative effect. Employees can fear being punished, experience narrow focus, or feel their autonomy is threatened. With these conflicting views, how can we effectively use monitoring in the workplace? When is it useful and when is it not? To answer this, we did a study in a clothing manufacturing plant in India. This factory produces trousers and jackets for men's suits.
I guess that's the same thing. Here, excuse me. The original aim of this Hawthorne experiment was to actually change the atmosphere and the environment and try to figure out if the change in lighting would affect the productivity inside a factory. They thought that the productivity would rise if the lighting was better. and it didn't matter because the lighting changed and there was no difference. And then they also found that the other group who had no change in their lighting also increased. The result was because of the attention. The result was because there was monitoring and that there was people who were actually interested in the results. So that interest in the results created kind of a collective feeling about producing something, and that there is an emotional drive to do something, not just a mechanical kind of drive. It can be increased when the feeling is different, and that workers like working in groups, and that led to some of the changes. So it suggested that workers were capable of making judgments about the standards of their own work, and that a trust level in the workers also would increase their productivity. So responsibility actually made them better. So the classical kind of Taylor thing is too mechanistic, trying to put humans as like they're robots. So it never took into account any other needs. Actually, it caused a lot of labor protests and union actions against companies over time. And there was that feeling that working in a group also is a motivator, and that workers should have some kind of like collective feeling about their work. The union workers were more productive for a long time. So then Maslow comes along, and he starts to get applied to the workplace, and I think this is a good one just to get started on that.
Do you know Abraham Maslow? He published a theory of human motivation in 1943. This is a short text that you can read in an hour or so, and it is free. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of the most famous theories in management, also widely used in marketing and human resources. If you want to know about the theory of needs, you should read from the source. According to Maslow, human needs can be ranked from the most fundamental to the highest need: physiological, security needs, love, esteem, and self-realization. Lectures that taught this theory invented a representation as a pyramid, now famous. Also, love needs were renamed belonging needs, as love is not a word that belongs in a classroom. At work, physiological needs can be fulfilled by a fair salary to provide for food, clothes, and a home. Security needs can be fulfilled by a long-term contract, good information on the future of the company, a safe work environment. The need for belonging or love in a professional environment is fulfilled in a good work atmosphere with teamwork and satisfying interpersonal interactions. Man is a social being who needs to feel he belongs to a community. Esteem needs are linked to positive feedback on the quality of your work. Being rewarded, praised, getting a promotion or a raise, knowing you are useful to the company are ways to fulfill the need for esteem. Finally, the need for self-realization, the highest human need according to Maslow, is all about something bigger. Create your own company, build something that lasts, innovate, change the world. In personal life, the need for self-realization is fulfilled by personal and spiritual development, religion, and culture. The hierarchy of needs in itself is not sufficient to explain motivation at work. First, Maslow adds a rule. A need appears only when all the lower needs in the hierarchy are fulfilled. Let's look at an example with simple human beings, cavemen. At first, our ancestors were seeking food and water, the physiological needs. Once satiated, cavemen could look for a cave, which provides security. It is clear that without food and a source of fresh water, a cave is useless. The need for security does not arise until the physiological needs are fulfilled. Only when our caveman gets it all can he crave for a family, a tribe, the love and belonging needs. Deprive them of cave, food, or water, and the need for a tribe will vanish. This is how the hierarchy works. Only when the tribe is strong and the belonging needs are fulfilled will our caveman look for status, respect, esteem from the other members of the tribe. He wants to become someone, maybe even a leader. Who would look for the esteem of a group they do not feel they belong to? Belonging first, then esteem. Finally, when all the other needs are fulfilled, cavemen can crave for more, something meaningful. Maybe they will want to communicate more, to talk, to sing, and maybe they will want to leave a trace and start to paint. But what's the link with motivation at work today in our modern life? Well, motivation at work arises from the fourth need, the need for esteem. When you feel the need for esteem at work, it means you look for the esteem of your colleagues and your superiors. And a good way to get that esteem is to work well, to work hard, to be useful, helping. Being all that is a good definition of motivation at work. So to create motivation as a manager, all you need to do is fulfill the first three needs of your team with a special focus on the belonging need. This can be done with simple measures like orientation for new employees, where they are individually presented to each member of the group they must belong to. Managers can promote group work, group incentives like team lunches and drinks, group activities like escape games or paintball, and try to create an authentic relationship with their staff. Remember that without a sense of belonging, there is no need for esteem and no motivation, according to Maslow.
So, yeah, that feeling of the Hawthorne effect and the fact that you were in a group and being observed, and that kind of made you want to take it to produce better and more productive. I guess the same thing happens in a classroom, right? It's like you have students who are self-motivated and you don't really have to push very hard. But then you have students who, when I walk into the room, all of a sudden the book opens and they pretend that they were reading the whole time. I think that's a bit of the Hawthorne effect, this idea that when somebody's watching you, you actually feel like you're doing something maybe just more meaningful in some ways. If you know someone's watching you, you know that it matters, whereas you're not even sure that it matters otherwise. So when you take Maslow so we want to apply Maslow first, and then we're going to talk about, what happened after Maslow, because they found that it didn't really work perfectly. Like you could, again, like money and security. Once in the U.S., I don't know if it's a recent study, but in the U.S., they found that as money increased up until about $70,000, then they didn't really get much. This is the happiness. Up to 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80, 90, 100. It didn't really add much. There was a point of happiness that was achieved with money, but then it didn't last. Is it true for all of them? I mean, is there a level of self-esteem that you don't need to really, you start to look for something else, a different challenge? So let's look at some of the ways that we can, so just put this under how we can apply Maslow to the workplace. I also put this in the classroom for you so you're able to check it out. So you have the physiological needs, which, it's your work atmosphere, right? It's the things like, the most basic things. You have a bathroom that works. Small things that you need to get the job done, a coffee machine, a place where you can microwave something, air conditioning would be number one for me, if I had to say. Any work environment for me requires air conditioning, especially in a tropical environment. Then you get to the safety needs. So that really depends on what kind of work you're doing. A construction worker is going to be different from another kind of job, right? You know, there's many more dangers and hazards in that work. So essentially, if you're in a country that has insurance, then that's not an issue. I mean, it's an issue, the safety, but you're at least not worried about what will happen if you get injured. In other countries like the US, and even Vietnam, right? There's a lot of worker situations. I see a lot of construction sites here where I feel that, wow, you know, who's going to take care of these people if they get injured in a job? But the number one safety and probably need is a contract that is, you know, as we know in Australia, contracts are quite strong. So if you have a workplace agreement or a contract, then it should be protected. Then it goes to other levels too, such as, you know, security in your old age and whether or not you have a pension. Is there protection for you, you know? And it used to be that people worked for one company too for a long time. This system worked well for a while. Up until my father's generation, I would say that, you know, there was a lot of loyalty to the company from the company. And because of that, they would keep staff for 25 years until retirement. And then they have a pension that they could rely upon in their old age. And if you ever ask them about the place they worked and the company, they'd say, wow, it was such a, you know, I feel like part of that company, you know. That's amazing to be able to do that, I guess, considering that you're working for them and helping them make millions and they are actually making you feel enough to feel something about them. These days, workers don't really have an idea to have a career that's with one company for that long. It's very rare to be able to do that, so you don't really think about pensions when you think about your safety needs. So the safety needs kind of, security and safety is something that's really not strong right now in the labor market. When you see Uber drivers or, I mean, the pandemic is a great example, you know, it's, you know, people's jobs are only as secure as the necessity, you know, as they're needed in this situation. So the safety and security needs, a lot of workers are unmet in the US, which means that they're a little bit competitive, like they're not as friendly, right? They're not as close together. They feel like, you know, almost, you know, it used to be that workers would be competitive at the self-esteem level. Who's going to be employee of the month? Now it's just survival kind of competition for social needs. But there are some ways that companies would be able to add to social needs. We'll look at their examples. Managing an employee's social needs can usually be done through promoting teamwork, of course, and team building exercises. Having departments where they get rewards. Sometimes if you reward a group, you get better belonging, as well as encouraging team building through social activities. But with many of us working from home, this can be tricky. Using communication tools like Microsoft Teams, Skype, or Zoom so employees can socialize or collaborate, work together, and make sure management are having regular meetings and catch-ups with their team. It's very easy now, I think. You know, a lot of people, they're happy about the way that they can work from home, but at the same time, it's like a very lonely experience. I think that it's quite, it's one of the main reasons why, my job makes me happy is because I get to see my students and colleagues every day. It's great, right? It's really something that you feel like you're moving somewhere as a group. When you're alone, it's that's why I really have a hard time with the video classes. To present to a machine is so hard. So I would rather do this. I would rather just relax into the ideas that I'm trying to present to you and not really worry about the screen or who's looking at me or whatever. Because it's too much. I feel divided from my team here. So then you get to companies. So companies can do some things. It's harder now, again, for them to build a social feeling in a group. The fourth level is self-esteem. Self-esteem means rewards and accomplishments and achievements. If you have a title in the company, the vice president or whatever, you feel esteem for yourself. At the self-esteem level, respect for others and praise is important. A 360-degree feedback and appraisal system can help. Right, so the more communication between the managers and the staff about how their performance is going, positive or negative, gives you a feeling that there's a care about what you're doing. If you're just on your own and you don't get a lot of feedback, it's quite difficult. And then that adds into rewarding employees' contributions. That could be extrinsic money or it could be intrinsic, which we'll talk about, which is an internal reward. We did talk about that a little bit in maintenance theory. And then you have recognition programs, employees of the month or the best team. And then, you have people who want to be part of the top team, and it creates competition and promotions. And that's exciting for a lot of companies. Manage that pretty well. But you have to be careful of the EEO in that and not discriminate. There's possible discrimination. Self-actualization is very hard to put into any kind of measurement. You get the feeling that the employee, you try to give your employees some freedom to explore, ways to solve problems and to make decisions, and that makes them feel loyal to the company. Another way to make them feel loyal is to give them stock or ownership in the company. Self-actualization at the highest level, personnel development plans, training, mentoring, so giving you responsibility for training other people or making you the person that other people ask for help. And the opportunity for promotion enables staff to be the very best they can be. That's more, it's still kind of esteem. I think of self-actualization as your work is not really work anymore. It's something that you love to do and you're fully engaged in it. And I think, how can managers make that happen? Well, first they need to understand the motivations of the drives that are in their interests of their employees and how much they want to do certain jobs. For example, you could try to give me more responsibility. I feel like responsibility is different at different levels. It's not the same but more, it's different. So there was a time when it was possible that I might have become the manager within the school, and I was like, so that means I have less time in the classroom. And the classroom is where I am most actualized, where I'm most feeling and most alive. Sitting in the office, okay, more power, more responsibility, maybe more money. It's not enough to it doesn't compare to actually having a classroom experience for me. So I wouldn't accept that. That's not something I want. So if you understand why someone is teaching is not to become a manager because they enjoy their job, then you can figure out maybe a system that will give them more, maybe they can help other teachers or programs that will improve the education in the school rather than just the academic or administrative parts of the school. Okay, Maslow in our book. Again, we're way in the back of the book. I'll just go through the book for a minute to kind of highlight certain elements. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A general theory of human motivation has been developed by Maslow, stated that humans have an ordered approach to meeting their needs, and that each person requires the needs that are lowest in the hierarchy first before they reach the next. And the idea is that, you'll be more and more motivated. The motivation is increasing over the levels. It's an interesting idea. It doesn't make sense in reality, right? Do you still have the same motivation for something after you already have it? So that's what some of the philosophers, some of the motivation theorists started to ask after a while. Belonging can potentially be satisfied by using employee activities and social functions. Self-esteem could be looked after with management praise of good work, recognition of employees, and of course, money. And self-actualization requires challenges and creativity and possibly some responsibility. So I think that works. You know Maslow pretty well, so I think we should go and consider the next guy, the next thing called Herzberg. Herzberg. Herzberg was another psychologist, which makes sense since most motivation theory comes from that. Herzberg kind of noticed that actual motivation to do a better job is not really based on all of the factors all of the time. Some of the factors are not really positively motivating. They're actually expectations at a certain point. So as workplaces have gotten better over the years and the positive results of management trying to be competitive for employees and to make workplaces better, you can expect certain basics in almost every workplace now. You don't feel as if you are asking for, everybody has insurance, everybody has, there's laws now protecting workplace safety, so every workplace is improving its workplace safety. So all of these things have been getting better, slowly, steadily. So it's actually not something that really motivates me. Someone tells me that, oh yeah, you can work at this new school, they have air conditioning. Okay, good. I hope so. I mean, what kind of school wouldn't? It's just that they already know that that's going to be there, and it's not even possible to motivate a person that way. But if you're trying to work and stay motivated, you can imagine that you might come to a workplace or a school, one of those old public schools in the French buildings with the nice, beautiful French windows, but they don't have air conditioning in the classroom. That's something that you would notice right away now. You would notice what's missing. You would notice what's not there in the workplace. You would notice if the salary, wasn't paid on time. That would bother you. That would demotivate you. So that was what Herzberg really came up with. He said, oh, okay, so there's more than motivating, there's demotivating. There's certain things that make work harder for you. The photocopy machine is a great example of something that's annoying if it doesn't work and can make life difficult for all of us when it doesn't work. So that was what Herzberg did. He says Maslow's fine, but the first level of Maslow and maybe the second and the third levels, these are what people expect. They expect there to be decent workplace relationships. They expect their security needs taken. They expect to get a salary that's good enough to keep a decent place to live. So in that case, we're working to make sure we maintain a level that's competitive in terms of not demotivating our staff by having poor workplace environments. Demotivating can actually lose productivity. So there's a big comparison there. He thinks, Herzberg that is, that the only real motivating factors are the ones at the top of Herzberg's pyramid. So let's have a little gym moment on this topic.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
Hi there. In this business topic video, we're going to take a look at another of the main motivational theorists. We're going to take a look at Herzberg, who became well known for his two-factor theory of employee motivation at work. Of course, Herzberg is just one of several well-known motivational theorists that you are likely to cover in your studies, including Taylor and his scientific management and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But in this video, we're just going to take a look at Herzberg, explain a little bit more about his background, and then take a look at the two different ways in which he thought employees should be managed based around their need for motivation at work. Like many of the motivational theorists, Herzberg was actually a psychologist, because of course motivation is intrinsically linked to the idea of what motivates a certain type of behaviour at work, what gives people the will to work and to work hard and to work well. But Herzberg's specialism was also in business management, the psychology of business management. And he came along later than Taylor, whose scientific management approach you may have come across. And Herzberg very much disagreed with Taylor's view of the world. Taylor, of course, if you remember from scientific management, was all about financial rewards. He believed that money alone was the motivating factor, and it linked on to the concept of piece rate, paying people for what they made. Herzberg took a different view. His studies convinced him that actually there were many more factors that were much more important than money, and in particular a series of non-financial factors, motivators, that were the key to success when it comes to motivating your staff. Herzberg divided his factors into two, hence the name two-factor theory. He identified a series of what he called motivators. These were the factors that actually do, in his opinion, or did in his opinion, motivate people to work hard at work. And he also identified a series of factors that he considered to be what he called hygiene factors. What he meant by this was that these are factors which, if they are not present, they will demotivate employees. However, simply by being present was not enough on their own to be motivators. So the key thing about hygiene factors to remember is that if they're not there in the workplace, they can be demotivating. If they are there, they're not enough on their own to be motivating factors. Herzberg believed that there were other factors that were more important than that. So let's just briefly mention what these motivators and hygiene factors were. Looking at the factors that Herzberg thought did motivate people at work, he was basically looking at the non-financial approach. So, for example, giving employees significantly more
So take a minute and just kind of imagine it, hygiene, this funny word, hygiene, means that these are things that are just basic things that are necessary for a job. So people expect to get paid, they expect a certain salary for a certain job. Australia actually has an exact amount they pay for each position. It's online, you can check it out. There's no mystery really behind that, so it is an expectation at this point. The working conditions, of course, quite important for an expectation. If the conditions are bad, if they're not good, you're gonna be like, what kind of place is this? What kind of, are they cutting corners? Are they taking advantage of the staff? Are they for real? Are they gonna survive? So there's a lot of, questions that you can end up with if you're not taking care of the working conditions. Are the policies fair? Are they non-discriminatory? Are they, fair? Is the management, do they follow their own rules? So these are the basic expectations. Now I know this can change. I mean, you look at the Amazon working conditions now, and it's quite amazing that people even are put into a position where they accept any of it because, the work that people do, they don't get breaks. They walk around, like the delivery people for Amazon, they walk around with a timer. And the timer is basically like a ticking bomb for every delivery. And it's like each delivery, you should be able to deliver it in 4 minutes, okay? To the next address is like 5 minutes. And they're ticking off all the time. And if something happens and you're 2 or 3 minutes, you want to just, I don't know what you would do. You get a quick phone call by somebody, you're going to be off of your whole day's schedule. You can't make up the time. There are no talking rules in the workplace. There are few, no bathroom breaks in many cases, and they have to be scheduled bathroom breaks all the time. So it's quite brutal. It's quite going back to an earlier time, and many workers are ending up accepting these things. Our expectations for the workplace can change. They have traditionally been going up rather than down, but now we're at a point where it's possible that there's some reversal in that because the market for labor is weak. And so as a result, management is taking advantage of us. This is why we need government to actually help us at this time. Okay, motivators, I think they're easy to follow because they're similar to Maslow.
Responsibility at work in their job role was a way to motivate them, as was designing their job and giving them work that they found fulfilling and perhaps challenging and rewarding, not just from a financial point of view. And Herzberg also stressed the importance of recognizing achievement recognising when employees were performing well and contributing to the business success. He thought all of those were factors that had the potential to motivate people at work. Whereas the hygiene factors, these were the factors that businesses simply had to get right. They had to be there. And if they weren't there in the right way, then they would have the effect of being demotivating. So, for example, if you hear about a workforce that is said to be demotivated, Herzberg would argue that this is likely to be due to the absence of satisfactory hygiene factors. For example, the pay may be significantly below what employees expect or believe they should be given. The working conditions are inappropriate, not up to standard, or not good enough for what they expect. Or perhaps there's some kind of deficiency in the way that the business is managed. Perhaps a lack of clear guidance and management guidance around supervision, company policies, health and safety, and what have you. If those factors are not involved, not in place in the business, Herzberg argued they would have the effect of being demotivating. So what are the implications? Well, if you accept Herzberg's analysis here of the two factors, then there are two things that management and leadership need to do. Firstly, they need to ensure that the motivators are in place. And secondly, they need to ensure that those hygiene factors are met. A key approach, as far as Herzberg is concerned, to motivation is ensuring that the hygiene factors are not there demotivating the staff. Because of course it could be that you're doing one, but not the other. You're trying to motivate with your motivators, but you haven't got the basics right in terms of those hygiene factors. Just looking at those motivators in a little bit more detail, there were two in particular that Herzberg would have supported and did support. One was a concept that you may have come across called job enrichment. What this essentially means is that your job has more depth to it. It has a wider variety of tasks and activities rather than just doing the same thing day in, day out. Job enrichment occurs when a job is given greater challenge, some greater complexity about the role. But it also arises when those who are doing the job feel as though they're in control of their workload, that they can manage it, and that they get a sense of reward, personal satisfaction from achieving a job well done. Job enrichment, Herzberg absolutely believed, was a source of motivation. And it follows also from that this concept of empowerment is also a potentially powerful motivator. Empowerment essentially involves giving employees some control over decision making, some authority to make decisions within certain limits. And if you give people at work responsibility and autonomy, it's often said that they're more likely to be motivated. Another way of doing that, of course, is to provide less supervision and not to be standing over their shoulder watching them the whole time, to trust them to do their job well. Herzberg would absolutely be a supporter of the concept of empowerment as a potentially powerful motivator at work. So Herzberg was a big fan of motivators, but he said the hygiene factors are also the thing to look out for. Make sure that you pay people properly and that the working conditions are adequate. Otherwise, everything else may be of no effect if hygiene factors are not present. That's been a brief overview of...
Okay, you can hear a little contrast in the end there, and that if you compare the idea of the Hawthorne effect in the first part, and that there was some additional motivation that came from being observed, or at least supervised in the job, it does turn out that in certain jobs that are it's one thing to be observed in maybe a call center or someplace where it's like you can kind of follow along the progress of someone's day. But it's another, or at least you understand as a manager what the job success looks like, right? You can see how it's working. Oh, okay, so they're making more looks like they have a successful call, they're making calls pretty regularly, it's working. So the basic KPIs that you're using to measure the success are clear. But when you get to something that's, like even doctors, right? Imagine a doctor, they don't really benefit from a greater amount of supervision, because even if you were being supervised, the person who's supervising you doesn't really understand how to do surgery. They can't give you any advice. They can't really supervise you for a KPI. Are you doing the right thing? How is the surgery going? So it actually could maybe be demotivating, because it might make the doctor feel like, hey, wait, you don't trust, do you trust me to do the right thing? I mean, I'm a professional, I should be making decisions, right? So there's two sides of that idea as well. So I don't think Maslow and Herzberg are super complicated ideas, but it's good to imagine it in the flow of theories, right? So at first it was just external things that made sense and KPIs that could be measured. And then gradually it came to be that there were internal motivations, and then gradually it turns out that it's not just everything is motivating in different ways, and you can just like kind of guide the employee to here or there, but actually there's an expectation of what is, the basic needs we're not on that level. We're not on the level of basic needs. Basic needs is, we have, that the worker should be respected more than just like basic needs. Like if I just want basic needs, I can get 1,000 jobs. I want more. I want more. It's going to take more to motivate me to feel like I'm really part of the organization, that they understand that I'm important to them, and I have some freedom to do my job. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it at there. So today's lesson was really Herzberg after Maslow, and how it connects back to Taylor. So that's that. We have a few different motivation theories left, and then we're going to talk about rewards and recognition at maybe the beginning of the following week, and then that's it. And then we would have a test after that, but we're not going to be able to, because we're not coming back until later. So that means we'll probably have to move on to the business plan project. Okay, everybody have a great day. Bye.